This episode is all about network and security engineers. So, we're going to look at some of their job responsibilities as well as some certifications they may obtain along their journey. If you've been trying to decide whether to go the networking route or the security route, then this video is just for you. So, stay tuned. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, and that notification bell. Welcome to Debt Free in IT. I'm your host, Mike. This podcast is for anyone who's looking to get into the IT industry, whether it's for a career change or you're just interested. I think you come to the right place. Within an enterprise, you have an IT department. Then within that IT department, you have your different teams. So you could have a server team, an applications team, a networking team, and a security team. Sometimes that networking and security team may be under one umbrella, maybe called something like an infrastructure team. But pretty much your network engineers, they're going to belong to that networking team, and pretty much they're the ones that's designing and maintaining that network infrastructure. Then your security engineers, they're going to belong to the security team, and pretty much their whole role is to protect that infrastructure. So of the two, security is probably more popular, but best believe you can't have one without the other. So let's look at some of the job responsibilities for a network engineer. So as a network engineer, pretty much you're going to be designing and maintaining that network infrastructure, like I stated earlier. You're going to be installing and configuring network equipment. So pretty much when there's a new device that needs to be deployed, sometimes it may be that network engineer that may be implementing that device or installing that device. Or sometimes, it could be anyone on the networking team. Most of the time, the team usually has similar roles. But usually the network engineer is going to be the higher of the administrator or the analyst. Usually that network engineer, then senior engineer is going to be after that. But pretty much anyone on that team can be the one that's installing, configuring networking devices. And then also you're going to be monitoring the network and improving any kind of network performance issues. And then along with that, you're also troubleshooting. So with any role in IT, especially if it's some sort of support role, pretty much there's going to be some troubleshooting. So you're going to be troubleshooting different issues as they come around. And one thing with networking is every day is going to be something different. It's no 2 days are the same. And then when everything is calm and you're not putting out fires, so to say, then you're going to be keeping up with the latest trends. So you always need to stay hip to or stay up on what's coming down the pipeline or what's new coming, because sooner or later it will start to be implemented in your environment. So you need to keep up and learn different technologies. You're always going to be learning. So that's one thing with IT in general. If you're looking to get into this field, be prepared to always stay learning. That's why you hear a lot of IT professionals always talking about different certifications, because a lot of times as new technologies come out, usually a certification is behind that technology where you can study and become proficient in that technology and then get that certification, which pretty much says that you understand that technology. So moving on to the security engineers. So pretty much like stated before, you keeping that network safe, so that's probably top priority for a security engineer or anyone on that security team. You want to keep your network safe. And keeping that network safe, this is done by pretty much running vulnerability assessments on your network. A lot of teams, they'll run a scan on the whole network environment and try to make sure if they see any vulnerabilities, make sure those vulnerabilities get patched and get fixed. And then pretty much that security team, they're going to be doing, they may be doing, depending on the environment, they may be doing some sort of pen testing. This is where you're trying to find holes in your network. And pretty much you want to be able to find the hole before a hacker or somebody with bad intentions find that hole. Because once they find the hole, then they're going to exploit it. So you want to be able to find that hole before you can go ahead and apply a fix to it. That way, get that hole plugged up. So pretty much you want to stay one step ahead of the hackers or the threat actors. So you always want to be ahead of the game. So as a security engineer or anyone in security or cybersecurity, you're always trying to stay ahead of the game. And then also you're going to be doing some incident response. So pretty much as you're monitoring your environment for any kind of alerts or security alerts, maybe virus alerts on different PCs, pretty much you're going to be pretty much responding to those issues. Any kind of security issue, you're going to be the one that's responding to it. So if there's something blocked on the web that shouldn't be blocked, then you may be the one looking into that issue, going into your firewall, unblocking that particular website or whatever it is. So, and then if some kind of antivirus or some kind of viruses show up on your network, you're going to be the one that's responsible for providing a fix. Now, that fix could be taking that PC or whatever off the network, having it re-imaged by your desktop team or something of that nature. As that network security engineer, you're kind of in the loop through anything security related. And then also you're going to be responsible for making sure the network is patched, making sure the servers is patched. So all this comes along with when you run your scan on your network and look for any kind of vulnerabilities. Usually in those scans, it comes up if Microsoft has brung out some sort of fix for, let's say, or a patch for some kind of vulnerability that was found out, let's say, a couple of days ago. Then usually when the networking team run their scan, that vulnerability shows up on their scan, and then they are the ones that's responsible for getting that resolved. So it may not be them resolving it themselves. It may be something that another team has to handle, but usually that security team is going to be the one that spot out those issues first. So on the security side, like I said, you're keeping that environment safe. So you're the bodyguard of the network. So let's look at the skills and certification that a network engineer and a security engineer may obtain along their journey. So first off, both of them have to know the fundamentals. So they're going to know the fundamentals of networking and possibly security as a network engineer too. So like I said, it always goes hand in hand. So both parties, most likely they're going to know a little bit of both. So where if it's a network engineer, they're going to be most stronger in networking, but they're going to be aware of any kind of security fundamentals also. And then vice versa. For that security engineer, they're going to be stronger with security, but they may know a little bit of networking because a lot of that, as you get into it, you'll see where they have a lot of things in common. So it goes hand in hand, that I always say. But then let's say for that network engineer, a good start for anyone that's trying to become a network engineer, I always say, you're probably tired of me saying it by now, is that CCNA for the most part. I think that's a good first cert to start your journey to becoming that network engineer. And then sometimes, let's say if you don't want to start out with that CCNA, because like I said, it's not no easy cert. A lot of people consider it first cert for someone going to networking, but it's definitely not nothing easy. So if you're trying to get something that's not as intense as a CCNA, but eventually it probably may lead up to a CCNA, then this is where you have the options of the CompTIA's Network Plus, which is real popular. And then also Cisco has some lower level certs such as the CCST networking. So any one of these certs could possibly lead to you then moving on to that CCNA. And then after that CCNA, usually when you get that CCNA, you want to eventually put that thing to use, so you want to get into an environment, start working, get into that networking field, you know, put in a couple years there with that CCNA. CCNA usually expire every 3 years. So let's say if you was fortunate enough to land a networking role when you first got your CCNA, then what you could do is work in that networking role for 3 years because that's when your CCNA is going to expire. And then when it's time to renew your CCNA, it should be either time or maybe past time for you to move up to that next level. So if you came in as a technician, you may be moving up to an admin. You came in as an admin, you may be moving up to a analyst, or let's say you may be moving up to that engineer role. And then from there, you get that CCNP. And a lot of times the CCNP is usually what moves a lot of networking folks from that administrator or admin role to that engineer role. Usually that CCNP. So that could be what end up leading you to that network engineer role. And then for most people, if you want to go higher, some enterprises, they may have a senior engineer. A lot of times, either you have two ways to achieve that. You could pretty much just keep that CCNP and then just with your experience, move up to that senior engineer. Or some people, you crave for more and you want to go after that CCIE certification. So you can go after that CCIE certification, which may move you past that senior engineer. You may end up being an architect for some enterprise. So you have a lot of different options to go with networking. And then too, I'm not saying that certs is the 100% way to go and the only way to go, because it is possible for someone to just be working at a company, end up getting in networking, may not have a CCNA, but they may have prove themselves that they're proficient in networking, and then just be in networking if their enterprise don't really care about certs. So they could just be in networking doing their job, and just with time building up and experience, end up getting that security, end up getting that network engineer role. And then moving on to security. So someone that's maybe looking to become a security engineer, pretty much everyone that's in security that I've talked to, a lot of them start out with CompTIA Security Plus. So usually that Security Plus is the barrier entry for any kind of security roles. And then from that Security Plus, then you start getting your work experience. And then from there, you can kind of venture out to something more specialized. Maybe you just want to go down the path of network security, where you start looking into some Palo Alto certifications. Or maybe you like the hacking part of security, so you start looking at that CEH certification. And then also you have the CISSP certification. So you have a lot of different ways that you can go once you get into that security realm. And pretty much the same as networking, once you put in that time and that experience, it builds up, and then you eventually end up in that security engineer role. And then also you could go to Cisco route with the security role, where you can maybe get a cyber ops certification. And then also that may end up you getting a CCNP security certification. So you have a lot of different options and different ways that you can pivot. For most people, just coming into the field or just coming into the industry, even if you do got one of these certifications, let's say you got that Security Plus or you got that CCNA, and you eventually want to end up in networking or security, but most people, you may end up on the phones first. So a lot of people end up doing support on the phones first for most companies. Once you do support on the phones for most companies, then after you build up your experience, then you're able to get off them phones. So don't don't be sad or anything like that if you happen to get one of these certifications and a lot of phone roles end up coming your way. A lot of times you can't just start out running. A lot of times you have to crawl, walk, then start running. But in most cases, I've seen it go both ways. So but just don't leave out those phone options. Everyone hates it. I know I hated it with a passion. But those phones are still around, and those phones are still hiring because usually they have a high turnover rate to go with them. So either way, both ways is possible. You could just get these certifications and get into your perspective area right from the jump. If you're finding value in this episode and you're listening via YouTube or your favorite podcasting app, please leave me a review or a comment. If you have a friend who needs to hear this, please share this episode with them. So you may be wondering, does any of these roles have any drawbacks or any downsides to them? So pretty much, first off, if you're doing something you love, they always say you never have a bad day doing it, so you never have a drawback or you never have a downside. But in my opinion, most of these roles, they do carry a huge amount of responsibility. So in networking, so pretty much you're maintaining that networking environment. So if something critical goes down in that networking environment, it's that network engineers and that networks team responsibility to get that device back online. Because if something critical goes down, then pretty much they can put your whole enterprise at a standstill. So everyone knows in most large enterprises, time is money. So you don't want to be down for no long amount of time. So there's always a huge responsibility around it. And then with security, it's real similar to that also. They have critical devices, so they have firewalls that's also on the network. So if anything goes down with those firewalls or anything that they have in the infrastructure, it could cause where no one can operate on that network also. So a lot of times you see the high salary, but just know that those high salaries do come with a lot of responsibility. So it is also a learning thing where what's what when you start out, something may be you seem may be hard or stressful, but usually after you go through it a couple times, it gets easier, and then you look back something that you once thought was real stressful, it ain't really that stressful no more. So both of these teams, they do have a huge responsibility. So next, let's look at the salary and demand for these positions. So there's always a big demand for cybersecurity and security engineers or security personnel in general. And then just as there's a demand for security, there's also a demand for networking. Now in the US, the average network engineer they pretty much range from 82 to 120K. Then for the security engineers, they pretty much around about the same range with an average of about 114K. In most cases, this is going to widely depend on your area. If you're next to a large area, a lot of times those large areas are going to pay way more. If you're in a small town, you may be getting paid pretty good compared to that in that town, the median income in that town, but compared to a larger area that may be nearby, most of the time they may be making maybe close to double of what you're making in that small town. So if you're getting into these roles, that's something to look out for. You want to do your research for your area. You can go to Indeed, go to LinkedIn, type in security engineer, type in network engineer, and just see what's the going rate around your area. So my advice for both of these roles is, like I said, both of these roles are in high demand. But the process of becoming a network engineer or a security engineer is not a fast process. So when you start your journey, you want to be consistent. A lot of this is going to boil down to consistency, because without that consistency, you may not be able to last for the marathon. It's not a race, it's going to be a marathon. So pretty much you need to have that consistency, and you need to have a genuine interest in whatever role you're pursuing, because without that genuine interest, you're not going to have that consistency. So a lot of times, you may get out of training or get the certification or somewhat, and you start applying for roles. Sometimes those roles come fast. Sometimes it may take a couple of years to land that role. So you want to be consistent. If it's taking some time, you want to make changes. Try to see where you might be messing up. If you're throwing your resume out there, you ain't getting no callbacks. Try out a different formatted resume or hire a resume writer. So you want to kind of test the waters with different things, and until you land that role that you're looking for. So the main thing is just being consistent. Like I always used to say, you got to stay ready, so you ain't got to get ready. So that brings me to the end of this episode. Hopefully you found some value in this episode. If you're on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, you can follow me at debtfreeinit. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me at debtfreeinit@gmail.com. Other than that, I'll see you next week. Peace.